This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors, here with the Silver Fox himself and Moneyball Ross. Boys, we're going to talk a little NBWA recap from last week, coming off the back of Lester being on the pod for a week of, and then a week after. So just kind of run on a couple of things that might be interesting to kind of run through and talk about. We learned some new stuff, a lot of things going on in DC that even though you might not care about politics cares about you. And that was loud and clear going on in DC last week in a lot of different ways as well, too. So one of the things to get started with is that there was a continued air of cautious optimism, Ross. On our front, I think one of the good things to kind of take away from that or kind of lean into is we're recording this at the end of April right now. What does that cautious optimism actually look like as we're doing goal setting and looking into planning May in reality? How's that playing out?
Well, I was going to say it's not optimistic.
So it's changed.
The industry hit a wall in April.
Q1 was cautiously optimistic, right?
Yes,
and
it was. Yes.
In this event and what was going on in the world was cautious optimism. But in April, we have seen a slowdown.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about it is I had a lot of customers panicking a little bit in the first 2 weeks, especially as those gas prices hit. And it's eased up in the last 2 weeks here. Mm-hmm. As we get towards the end of April, it's easing up in terms of the impact. So I think people are, whether the ceasefire or whatever, I've been surprised by how quickly the customers reacted to this in terms of fuel price, maybe crowding out purchases in our space, but it's coming back here at the end of the month. So whether this is correlated, I'm drawing a conclusion here that war, fuel price equals optimism in the first quarter, hitting the wall in the first 2-3 weeks of April. So which of these is not like the others kind of deal?
Well, that bias happens. That human bias is going to happen. And when you see new things and you see gas prices jump up as much as they want, people are going to start to behave differently as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree too that I heard a lot of, cautious optimism. But what's interesting too, and we talked a little bit about this previously, is that I think Ross, you even said, or in another podcast I heard that, hey, if you just looked at what the stock market's doing, you'd never know that there's a war going on, right? And in some cases. I think the other thing that's interesting is I think to your point is that people are probably, they're just as cautiously optimistic and somewhat maybe overreacting, but there's still a lot of unknowns. How long is it going to continue? We're starting to see things like, as I travel, airlines are sending out signals that they're going to, start to have to respond to the high fuel prices. So, I think people are, again, cautiously optimistic, right?
Structurally, too, airlines hedge fuel a lot as well, and they usually have long contracted hedge. I mean, that's a classic way to do it, though, too, Ross. Not everybody follows that process, but a lot of people do. And case in point, like Delta, as I am a Delta loyalist, they own their own refinery. So talk about a long hedge in the way their process goes, too. And that is part of it. I have started to see airline prices, float up with gas along the way too, particularly like, longer flights coast to coast, not necessarily maybe the shorter flights as much, but definitely the longer flights coast to coast that I've been on are more expensive than what they have been in the past too. We're going to get into THC beverages in a minute. We're going to keep that as its own little, major point, but still lots of conflicting messages from members of NBWA, those who want to do it, those who don't want to do it, those who are indifferent of it. What's surprising to me is how many people really do feel in their heart that hemp is a huge distraction, or Delta 9 beverages is a huge distraction from beer. And we just haven't seen that in the data. And there's a ton of people who think that, and I'm just not seeing it in the data. And I will continue to sit on that until somebody can show us in the data. Even to call back to Lester's points last week too, Ross, on the pod, is that, marijuana, hemp, cannabis has been around forever. It's not really shown to slow down, and beer consumption has largely stayed the same for the most part. Yeah, it's moved around a little by little, but not meaningfully making an impact in any of the hard data that we look at either.
Well, I mean, I would challenge you and Lester there. I mean, I didn't challenge Lester on the call last week because we were, we're riffing, having fun, and moving fast. But what data are you referencing? I mean, obviously, Delta 9 has grown from 0 to what it is, and at the expense of what, right? Because I would argue that there's only so much disposable income. So, did it come from potato chips? Did it come from fish? Where did it come from?
The consumers that are out there, if it's coming from anywhere, it's coming from wine and spirits rather than coming directly out of that core beer consumer based on demographics. That's what I continue to see, is that older demographic that has left beverage alcohol completely or is not participating that much, if they are pretty much on the wine and spirits side, those are the folks that are coming back into the fold rather than staying on the sidelines drinking nothing, as reported by many of the Delta 9 people, and watching these people buy these products in the market as well, too.
You're saying that old people are buying it, is what you're saying?
Yep.
But spirits has continued to be strong, though, hasn't it?
Spirits is weak, and beer and wine. Well, both, at least in Q1, spirits and wine were weaker trends than what beer has been. Beer has had a better Q1 in 2026 than wine and spirits, for sure. So I think that's where it's sourcing most of its dollars from. The other two people that came onto the stage doing the brew event too, George, and we were both there for this conversation too, was Nick Moody and Caroline Levy. They're both like financial analysts and Wall Street, and have been lots of industry experience, have spent tons of time talking about the industry and monitoring these CPG markets, including beverage alcohol, for a long, long time. So two trusted voices that are really fun to listen to and have a lot of insights too. Couple of their big takeaways that I found interesting was that Nick continued to push the idea that the current business is more cyclical than structural. That is his continual takeaway, is that he's seeing across multiple CPG categories that more and more of these things are cyclical rather than structural, because everybody's trying to call the same thing. And I think maybe you can help me with a quote, George, too. It was more centered around like everybody's trying to, call or put their number on it. But at the end of the day, he's seeing the same trends across multiple things and very similar processes.
He is. And I thought the one thing that was really interesting is that there still continues to be the analysis and just discussion around the effects of GLP, right? So what is that doing with consumption? And he was I'd say very optimistic around it, because he was very clear. He's like, I am one of those people that are taking it. And so he was looked at across, different segments, whether it was snack or beverage, but he felt like it really is giving people more flexibility to do things, right? In terms of, if I drink or if I do this or eat or what have you, that maybe I can do more. And so he continues to be, I think, very optimistic in terms of, number one, the health results that are starting to be published, but just the effects on consumption overall.
Specifically, Ross, he talked about GLP-3s that are not yet approved, but I thought this was wild. Not yet approved, but a GLP-3 is an advanced GLP that actually boosts metabolism. So his argument was, if you go in a world where more and more folks are actually on these drugs and they're on GLP-3s, 2027 and beyond, which I think that was his timeline he was talking about, was 2027 or 2028. What happens to consumption if you have an increased metabolism with very little to no side effects? Because right now the GLPs are all centered around suppressing appetite and suppressing desires, and it actually lowers the amount of consumption that you make, makes you feel full faster, is the way that folks that I know personally that are on these things have experienced. That's kind of the side effect, is that it makes you feel full faster, so you actually do consume less. But I thought that was kind of a wild take, right? Like, if you live in a world where you've got more and more, faster and faster metabolism, what that consumption rate might do. Can you drink whatever you want or eat whatever you want and have zero to no side effects? Have a metabolism of a 22-year-old. I don't know if that's simply healthy, but that was one of the things that Nick was talking about.
Yeah.
Also,
and I'm also always cautious of the idea of no side effects.
100%. I don't think you'd catch either of us taking these things, but I don't think we're the core market either.
Right.
What was that drug when I was a kid? Like Fen or?
Yeah, Fen.
Yeah, that was supposed to have no side effects.
What was Fen?
It was basically a stimulant that was supposed to help you lose weight because it bumped up your metabolism, right? So you were just grinding through whatever you consumed a lot faster.
Fascinating. So the original version of something like this.
I think phentermine was one of the ingredients in that. So I think there were multiple iterations of how they try to utilize. Used to be able to, let's say 20 years ago, go to your local 7-Eleven and, right across the counter, get a bottle of phentermine. Mini Thins, I think they were called. And until, 17 and 18-year-olds were dying of heart attacks because they took a handful of them because they needed to, study for a test or be ready for a football game, and then they dropped dead. Kind of brought that to a screeching halt.
Yeah, that's a Debbie Downer. Not what we were looking for at all. Sad panda for sure.
Dang, how'd the FDA let that happen?
Yeah.
Again.
Case in point, why I don't think any of the three of us would take it, but there will be many folks out there that are interested in it as well. Caroline talked about, Ross, it was like listening to one of your comments on the pod, that the power has shifted towards the distributors, with wholesalers expanding more into wine, spirits, RTDs, and non-alc. They now have more influence than ever over the shelf space and the pull-through, which products survive, which products succeed, and which products fail. And like word for word said exactly the same thing you've said multiple times on the podcast too.
Been saying it for 10 years, waiting for somebody to agree.
Yep. Well,
glad somebody did.
She has picked up as well too, in a big way too. Live events, concert, real world activation, that's, came up as well too. People are looking to spend more money out of home. It supports what Lester talked about last week on the podcast as well too. And that, how you leverage that, how you find those opportunities as a distributor are very important. And then the last piece here, I'm not so sure if I bought into this 100%, George, either, but Nick talked about Japan, and that Japan's largest channel is convenience. And what is the oldest average population in the world is Japan. And that as they've gotten older, that those shoppers have been looking to get smaller and smaller stores because it's easier to shop smaller and smaller stores instead of wandering around a 100,000 square foot supercenter like a Walmart supercenter. Do we buy that, or do we think that convenience store channel, which has always been more like pull up gas station, is going to stay that realm inside of America? Or do we actually think that our grandparents and as our older boomers age are going to start to actually go to C-stores more often? I don't know if I buy that philosophy yet or that alignment there.
I mean, I personally think it's somewhat cultural, right? So it's going to be dependent upon, is it fair or is it accurate to compare Japan to the U.S., right? Just from, overall culture, the cities and those types of things. But I mean, I think it's an interesting point of view to watch. But I think if you ask my opinion today, I'm not sure that, especially the older society, they're pretty set in their ways, right? And not saying that they're not dynamic, but I would think they would tend to just go with what they're comfortable with.
It's funny. I actually was with some friends and we had this conversation about the C-store culture in Japan. I mean,
Did you?
yeah.
hang out at my parties, man. You'll have a good time talking about C-stores. No, but the comment was coming back from all of our friends that went to Japan, which we didn't get to go this year, was just how damn nice the 7-Elevens are. Like you walk in, they're immaculate. You know, you go in the bathroom, it's got those toilets that wash your butt for you. You know, they have those triangles of rice that are just amazing.
Those are called bidets, Ross.
I'm just going to go with butt washing toilet. You know, and they've got amazing food, like sushi that's actually really good. And you don't feel like you might get stabbed on the way out or the way in. You know, the counter's not behind bars. I mean, I might go to a 7-Eleven if they had this amazing food and butt washing toilets. I mean, as it stands in the States, I mean, every 7-Eleven, at least in my part of town, is you don't want to be hanging out there, especially not after 9 o'clock at night, much less getting sushi there. So, I mean, the question we were asking in this group was, why are convenience stores so gross and dangerous when in Japan they're just amazing?
But I think you also got to look at it, at least from the U.S. perspective, like Circle K totally changed their business model, right? They're not a gas station. They really want you to come in, and they've got a whole kitchen in there, right? They've got, a massive arrangement of different kinds of snacks and foods. So gas is almost an afterthought, right? At some point you could see, you know, them creating a bar for you to sit down and have a cocktail with that pizza that you just bought. But don't know that they'll truly go that way. But they're clean. So I think they're trying to redefine what that space looks like. At least from
in America, you stop at a convenience store in Europe. I mean, yes, you see like a bunch of old dudes sitting at the bar drinking a glass of wine while they're filling up their car. I mean, again, to your point, there's a cultural thing there, and maybe the United States, it's Buc-ee's, right? I mean, maybe that's our convenience store. I mean, we supersize the shit out of it. People love Buc-ee's. Have you guys been to a Buc-ee's?
Yes, they're incredible.
Yeah, unbelievable. Made it a point to stop there and have lunch even.
They're a whole nother. Yeah, they're a whole nother animal. I mean, it is a good blueprint to kind of talk about. To me, you know, George, you're the silver fox on the podcast. I just don't see your group of folks and your peers going to a 7-Eleven when you have availability of, the things that are big differences between, you know, C-store shopper in Japan versus C-store shopper or just C-stores in general in America is they're not as easy to get to. Remember, Japan is incredibly dense. It's also like mostly walkable or short drivable to one of these things. It's their available store. We don't have massive super centers over there the same way we do in the US. And y'all have caught like a little bit more of like the e-commerce. Walmart will bring this to you, you know, shoppers, Instacart will bring stuff to you. That to me is where the boomer generation is going to age and shop in home rather than actually go out to these C-stores, because this e-commerce capability has been built up around us. You don't even have to go in the store. You just go online, you go into it, you buy what you want, it just comes to your store, somebody drops it off to you, put it away. I just don't see why we would follow that same path as Americans, given the cultural and the logistics structural is different as well. And that breeds right into Nick's last point and Carolyn's last point is like the agentic e-commerce. And Ross, I wanted your take on this too, that his attitude was that brands, and he covers the CPG space, they both do really well, that brands, the way that shoppers are going to shop for things is going to completely change. You're going to have your own agent. You're going to interact with it, and it's going to serve you up products rather than what the three of us has become accustomed to, which is searching for products, going to find those products, maybe reading reviews, considering options, whether it be on an e-commerce site like Amazon, going through Google, looking at different blue links, and then jumping into one. Do we buy that we're going to change our behaviors in that way to really do agentic shopping, Ross?
Well, I'm not the reference point, but I built my own agentic agent that has learned, or I've taught through probably a year and a half, 2 years of data now, what it is I like to drink. And specifically, I'm thinking about wine here, right? Okay. So now I can take a picture of a shelf of champagne at a store, a wine shop, and based on the dosage, the makeup of the grapes in the sub-region, and stylistically what makes the best match for me to buy tonight, right? Because I don't know all the champagnes. I mean, I know what I like, and I know historically what I've liked. And again, the agent's smart enough to then also comb and reference price and figure out what's the best value to return ratio. So I do that. For the first time in the last 30 days, I actually started using it for the beer side for myself. You know, some of these Belgian beers, I was looking at a wall of Belgian beers. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I want to drink, you know, and I put it at it. It was like, okay, based on, you know, the German styles you've liked and basically, you know, the lift profile, hop profile you liked, it's your best choice. And it was a good choice. It was a good recommendation. So am I the typical market? I don't know. Are we all going to be sitting around taking pictures of walls and tap handles and like running it through our agent? I mean, it's like that meme where it's, you know, the person comes up to order and he says, the waiter has approached me and asked me what to order. What should I do? And the agent, you know, respond, and they tell them what to say. And then the waiter says, oh, the customer has responded to me and asked me what's good on the menu. What should I say? I mean, I hope we don't get to this dystopian hell.
Ooh, everything will grind to a halt. I still like a good opinion from a server in a restaurant, 100% for sure. Somebody who's got a real strong opinion. That is it's fascinating for me to hear how you started to do this, Ross, because for me, I'm still a blue link guy. I love to Google. I'm going to poke myself around, find my own way, make my own decisions, that process. I'm somewhat set in my ways on that. I know that Gen Z and the other younger generations will make new behaviors more faster than I will, but I don't know if I see this as a Shopify experience, agentic kind of world day in and day out.
Well, as you look at that too, so let's just play for a moment that it does start to gain traction, right? So it's making suggestions or actually building your cart, and then you're going to take stuff out of it, right? Or maybe add to it. But at some point, what's the play going to be from the suppliers to influence what ends up in that suggestion, right? So, yeah, I always buy X, Y, and Z, and so therefore I'm getting something and I'm getting suggestions or a pre-built cart. But certainly, you know, the suppliers are not going to sit on the side and just let that happen, right? They're going to use their dollars to influence that purchase, especially if I'm not coming into the store. And let's face it, I mean, I don't know how widespread this is, but you can't. Personally, I don't think you can ever take out of the equation, right? And maybe a different way of saying it is how do you put it in the equation of the impulse buy, right? Or the last minute thought process. It's like, oh yeah, I do need this, right?
Because there is a lot of shopping in person where you gain a lot of retail value out of that impulse purchase when you cruise by.
Right. I mean, to me, maybe that's where the agent is it learns you well enough to know what it can be your impulse, right?
I think if we play this out, and I've thought through this, and I had a conversation about this too, which is because I think it actually amplifies the value of the humans in the supply chain. And bear with me for a second, right? Because, you know, we're sitting down, my wife and I was looking across the wine list, and I was having the AI try to identify like a Burgundy that I would be interested in across the list. She said, well, we no longer need a sommelier. And I said, yes, you do. Because who built this list? This list had to be curated by somebody that was trying to say, hey, heavy duty Italians, lighter Italian wine. Somebody wants Burgundy, different types of Burgundy, earthier ones, lighter, more perfumed ones. Somebody had to curate this list. That person became more valuable because now, as a consumer, I'm really hyper-focused on what I'm looking for myself. And hopefully we've got a SOM on the other side that's smart enough to put together a list that caters to the most number of people possible. If I find a great bottle that really resonates with me at a great price off that list, I'm more inclined to come back and drink there or eat there. So I think it actually amplifies the value of that human being that's making the purchase at the restaurant and the sales rep calling on them from the other side, right? Because now it's not just I'm trying to sell things for the sake of selling. I'm trying to build out the best list I can to maximize the experience for the drinker, an educated drinker, right? And it's not me just, you know, walking in there uneducated and saying, I like red wine and I like them to be big. Well, the som's just sitting there, or sommelier sitting across the table. I was like, well, shit, what do I do with that? Now the guy is armed with the last, you know, 100 wines that they drank across multiple regions, and they can have a much better conversation with that somm about what it is they're looking for. And this translates to beer too, a little bit less, especially in the craft space and especially the high-end craft. It does translate. But I think it actually amplifies the value of a human being that really has institutional knowledge.
Knows what they're doing, knows how to execute. Yeah. And can provide insights and opportunities for sure.
Well, and I think there's a dynamic to that too, though, that, that somm is going to know what's on the menu that night, what's in, what are the ingredients in there. So that's going to add a whole nother, point of view on what they're going to recommend. But I think there's a human element to all that. At least for me personally, it's the interaction, it's the romancing of it. Maybe it's even so far as to say, I go in dead set saying I want, a cab from, wherever, Sonoma or whatever it might be, and the sommelier or even the waiter or waitress just says, "Hey, have you thought about this?" Right. So even though you've got a framework of where you're at, they might influence you outside of that framework that you might never have if it's very just, hey, I know these 37 things and this and that and the other, right? It's that human factor that romances it, that maybe sparks a level of intrigue that you may or may not get.
Well, you guys have opened my eyes to more thinking about this. My immediate response is that my wife loves the shopping experience. She ain't going to change, then give that up to an agent in any way, shape, or form. And I know she's not alone, but I also know that there are other people who behave and do shopping in different ways. And this is kind of some fun use cases that you guys have talked about as well, too. You guys ready to pick on Mikey? Since he's not even here, he can't even defend himself. It's great. So back to the predictions pod, Mike, he, I don't know if it was a prediction for him, Ross, as much as it was, I think you called it a wish list. But one of his wish lists for the year was that we had already gone through the federal hemp ban by the time we did the predictions episode in January. And he said that he thinks the can gets kicked down the road, or that there's some kind of resolution to that hemp ban coming. So fast forward to now April, we are coming off of, as you're listening to this in May of 2026, we're coming off of Schedule 3 for medical marijuana. That just happened. There's also 4 or 5 different hemp bills that are actually on the floor that still have procedural life left in them, right? So this is important. There's still procedural life in which they could be voted on by one or both chambers that are trying to get run through to actually move. The one with probably the biggest opportunity, or the one that maybe the industry actually likes the most, is the Hemp Planting Predictability Act, which is a bipartisan bill to delay the measure and seeks to deter the implementation of the new federal hemp restrictions from November 2026 to November 2028 to give farmers more time to adjust. Just kicks the can down the road, right? That's the objective, just boot it down the road. Then there's another one that's the Hemp Safety Enforcement Act that was introduced by Senators Rand Paul and Amy Klobuchar. This bill aims to preserve the industry by shifting the primary regulatory authority of hemp products from the federal government to state and tribal governments. That would mimic much more to the way that beverage alcohol is treated, and many other legislative or laws in the land as well too, is that the federal government says, hey, we don't have the authority or don't want to have the authority or get down to the minutia of how people want to treat this product across our great land. There's so many different states and a lot of different thought processes and theories. Just boot it back to the states and let the states figure it out. So those are probably the 2 favorites out there as well too. You guys got any opinions around whether, George, you were there, whether we think any of these get done before the end of the year?
Gosh, I mean, I think there's a lot of, in the political realm, there's just a lot of other things going on too. I'd like to think that they would, but with so many things, across all the dynamics, right, of just society, will this rise up enough, right, to make it through and get some kind of decision? But I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'd like to just see them make a decision and move on. But I think ultimately, I think they're going to kick it down to the states, I would hope that would be the direction that they head, because that seems to be the most logical, and there's a proven path to success there.
Ross, any thoughts on if this will get done?
I mean, leave it to Rand to try to kick it down the states. That's a true libertarian right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the Constitution specifies any power not explicitly given to the federal government should be at the state level. So I think that's a good argument to be made. I'll put good odds on that they would kick the can down the road. I don't know if they're going to be able to kick it to the states. I don't think the federal government likes to give up power once it has it.
That's a good point. So banking on to kick it down the road and that they keep control of it from the federal
I think
side.
there's enough money at play here, and they'll say these poor, I mean, they're not going to come out and say, well, there's so much money in special interests. They're going to say these poor farmers are suffering. I mean, but it's going to come down to money. I think I couldn't believe they did what they did. I mean, there's too much money at play. But I think the money came out of the woodwork when it finally realized that, oh, politics, I may not care about politics, but politics cares about me. When they found out that politics cared about them, you better believe they showed up in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you listen to like Harry's podcast on the Beer Business Daily, or you read Beer Marketers Insights, and everybody is talking about, hey, if you're in the cannabis hemp beverage business, you didn't have a lobbying firm in 2025 in DC. You definitely have one now in 2026. And so many of them have the same one. There's association efforts that have been in play. And really, the cats and dogs, and everybody's got a different opinion about how this should be regulated, has slowly gotten down to a whittler, down to a smaller and smaller group of like, hey, these are things we're willing to tolerate. There's still a couple of chaotic folks out there that want to have no rules and no regulations that may or may not cause drama or challenges and file lawsuits in some way, shape, or form as any of these laws change. That's going to kind of whittle itself out or work itself out over time. But that is continuing to happen for sure. I'm going to bank on that nothing gets done still. I've sat in the camp of it. I don't think anything gets done. We ride into 2027. This ban gets rolled into place, and we see where the chips fall at the end of the day.
Something you said earlier in the episode, I want to circle back to. Like you said, in DC, there was a group of people that didn't want it.
So there's a group of people. There are differing opinions as beverage alcohol distributors, as NBWA members. There's a vast different opinion around whether people should or shouldn't have these products in the market, whether we should or shouldn't be supporting them. And what's interesting to me about the behavior of this is that if you're a Constellation wholesaler, you are like, don't need to worry about it. I'm not concerned here. If you're an AB only distributor or Molson Coors only distributor, you're much more interested in looking at what these products could do for you as a bottom line. That's what I see over and over again. And I liken it to the story about when AB distributors laughed and ruffled feathers with all the Molson Coors distributors over something like Four Loko in the early 2000s. Like, why are we selling high alcohol content, high caffeine content products in the same? This is a bad idea. But if you're a Molson Coors distributor in early 2000s, whether you had Constellation or not, you were like, I need the money. I'm going to sell this product. I got to figure out a way to make ends meet. That pure lichen product, it's a different product, but it's a similar kind of challenge on the P&L side for a distributor of that. I need to move the needle on my P&L and sell a new product line. Hemp beverages gives me an opportunity to do that. Some folks are turning their nose up at distributors for doing that and saying, why would you do that? It's bad for the industry. It's bad look for us. Just like AB distributors turn their nose up at money for local distributors who happen to be mostly Molson Coors at selling a product with high alcohol content and high ginseng and caffeine and everything else that happened, which then ultimately got banned by the feds too.
I mean, I'll push against that to some degree. I mean, there's no stores, or there were no stores that were selling caffeine alcohol mixtures separate from the 3-tier system. Right. It was birthed into existence in the 3-tier system.
Out of nowhere. Yep.
Out of nowhere. This, on the other hand, is you can get THC at shops. Again, it depends on the state you're in, but in most states now, you can get it at the shop. So why, as a 3-tier beverage distributor, would you not want to eat those people's lunch.
You and I think I sit on the same token, which is like sell the product. The product's an opportunity, bring the product in. And Ian from Delta Ventures, Ian Dominguez, he's talked about like the pyramid of, I think it's kind of a pyramid of shopper of a THC Delta 9 cannabis type product. And that the widest base is that Delta 9 beverage. Those beverages do not work in the cannabis, hemp or the cannabis THC stores. They do not work in the dispensaries. That shopper is the narrow tippy top of the pyramid. There's a few of them out there. They are heavy users spending $400 to $800 a month in a dispensary, a car payment, reasonable car payment in a dispensary every month. And they're not drinking Delta 9 products at 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams. They're looking for a bud. They're looking for leaf. They're looking for something else that is in that dispensary, and that attraction of the Delta 9, the base consumer of that wide base, is not going to a dispensary either. There's zero overlap between the two, is the argument, Ross. So that's why I sit in the camp too of that. I don't think that there's a lot of overlap between a beer distributor's consumer, stealing product from Modelo, Constellation, AB, Molson Coors. I just don't see it detracting from those brands' success into Delta 9. Maybe a little more in craft, but I don't see the biggest of the biggest brands failing because Delta 9 showed up on the scene. And you got 3 of the biggest brands growing. Busch Light, Modelo, and Ultra are growing right now. So that's not stopping anybody from those brands right now.
I mean, I still think it's a competition for discretionary dollars. I still think that. And I think this allows the just 3-tier system to take the power back. Because, I mean, I might be okay. Because you're right. The consumer's probably 80-20. 80% of the consumers are going to be satisfied not to have to walk into a dispensary, and they'll pick up the cans and be good about it, right? So I just saved them walking across the street to the dispensary and head them off where they're already shopping, right? I'm going to I'll pick up some beer, I'll pick up some chips, I'll pick up some Delta 9, whatever, right? That's the consumer. And you're going to take a lot of the discretionary dollars back from these dispensaries. I still think that, any incremental dollars that are being spent on Delta 9 or THC has to come at the expense of something else. And maybe it's not all alcohol. But at the same time, I mean, people have a limited amount of discretionary spending capability.
Well, I like your attitude. I like your attitude around that. We want to capture more discretionary dollars on our trucks and our deliveries some way, shape, or form. And this is an opportunity to continue to do that. So that's the people that, have mixed signals going to DC around what should or shouldn't happen with hemp beverages. And we've got clients that have mixed opinions about what should or shouldn't happen, and friends of all 3 of us that have mixed opinions in the industry about what should or shouldn't happen as well too.
Yeah.
So I think
we sell alcohol. We're not in the moral high ground. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, maybe if we were selling like cocaine to children, sure, maybe we can stand on that hill. But
we sell
we're not in the baby food business. Yeah. We're in the alcohol business.
Where I still think this thing doesn't happen. And people are going to give me shit around like, why don't you think anything will happen with this? To me, it's a mechanics problem. There's not enough time, and there's momentum that is growing on it. A case in point, 4 or 5 different bills that are out there in the ecosystem that could get movement at any moment's notice. But there's not enough time left. And if there's not enough time left until they break for summer, we're going to go right into the midterms. Midterms are have its old ball of wax around what happens with the midterms. And then they're going to come back from midterms. They're going to be in lame duck. And who knows what happens after that? And if the Dems do win and do bring more seats back with themselves to DC, they could stick their head in the sand and do nothing in the lame duck and try to do nothing moving in to 2027 just because Trump was the one who descheduled marijuana to a Schedule 3 and did everything else and wants to move. He let this happen where it became hemp became illegal, and they're just going to stick it to the man, and that's what they want to do. And there's just a lot of headwinds against them mechanically. Momentum and excitement are something different than the mechanics of how shit gets done in Washington.
I mean, the counterpoint to that would be that the Democrats have historically been much more in favor of legalization than conservatives. Now,
How much
Trump,
have they actually done?
well, what has any politician ever done? Or what do you even want them to do? I mean, everything they do makes shit worse. So anyway, the point
Leave us alone and do nothing. Like, they haven't done shit when it comes to this. Trump's the one who's done most of it, and the Dems have sat in their camp and have sat on their hands for years, and have sat on their hands just as much time as the Republicans have.
Fair enough.
Nobody has done shit about it.
They will take back the House most likely, and they're going to be coming from districts that are much more in favor of legalization and widespread proliferation of THC
And decriminalization.
So in theory, that should be a recipe for further progress here. In theory.
Well, I still stand pretty firm on the fact that, politics is about politics and business is about business, and seldom do they work well together, right? It's one's going to take over the other. I think the other point I'd make too is that if there, whatever happens after the midterms, I just think that there's going to be so much leading into it. And even the point you made too, Bud, you got the summer pause, right? So nothing's going to happen unless there's just a particular huge surge early on. It's just going to get lost in the wash. And I don't think anything's going to happen with it. And once midterms go by, I think whatever happens there's going to be so many other things that they're jostling with that it loses attention.
I'd love to be wrong. I would love nothing more than be wrong.
Yeah, me too.
Yep. That moves us into our last little conversation, Ross, as you talked about, what's going to happen with the Republicans and the Dems and the midterm, all that good stuff. We had Brad, Todd, and Kate Bendenfield. I'm sure I'm butchering her name on some midterm math. They both came in to talk about what's going on with the midterms, how's this going to play out. And Brad's a conservative political strategist. Kate comes from the Democratic political strategist and messaging and communications. They're on CNBC quite a bit. And it was fun to listen to them talk about this too, George. And we're a little nerdy on the political side here for those of us who are into that, maybe not be, but they were really talking about Ross around particularly Brad saying that, hey, yeah, there's a pathway where the Dems might add some new seats and might, get the House back. But the way the maps are drawn now, they're hyper competitive, and that there's more and more folks that are hyper not competitive, better way to say it. There's no competition across them, and that we're probably going to be in a place where we don't see as much shift as what there might be. I don't know if that lands on everybody else or anybody else who's going there, but to me, I found that really interesting. George, anything you wanted to add on that front from their conversation in the room?
Well, what was interesting is they really did highlight, it's like as they try to redistrict, it's like, okay, so while we were there, right, Virginia, that was up for vote. And so they said, no matter, if the Republicans don't like what happens in Virginia, they're just going to find another state and offset whatever changes they made there. So it just seems to be, net, it's going to be plus or minus one somewhere, somehow. And that's really where it's going to center towards.
So one of the things that was going on is that, Ross, they were talking about in real time, they were talking about redistricting in Virginia, which actually did happen. And I thought I'd pull up this map because I thought this map was kind of crazy. So this was the previous congressional district map where you've got some competitive seats, some Dem seats, and then some, Republican-led seats. This did pass. So now all of this, octopus arm, tentacle arms was the description here of these districts up here, were all split off from two really core Dem districts to multiple Dem districts, and they went from was it a 4-6, George, I think is what it was, kind of spread, or 3-6, 3-7 spread to a 10-1 spread.
Right. I think it was 4-6.
4-6, and that this is what the new districts are going to look like come the midterm election and moving all this around. So that's going to shift some seats around, but in true political fashion, what else can we do? Well, here comes Florida. Florida can just fix this real quick, and they're going to come back and they're like, we could redistrict as well too. So they're going to redistrict and flip 3 seats back, and that should net out keeping everybody happy and even and pretty copacetic. So we're going to peel off a middle ground district here, expand this line over here, shave these here, and peel back 3 more seats.
Well, and it's almost indifferent when, Texas did what they did. What was the first thing? California's like, fine, then we will redistrict as well.
Crazy.
According to Uber driver politics, though, here in California, I'm out in California this week, and Uber driver politics in California says that there's a huge red wave brewing in the state because people are just so fed up with the taxes and everything here. So, I just found that to be interesting, and just kind of sit back and watch and see what happens there.
Ross, anything you're hearing on your side of the fence as you will listen and watch this stuff too?
I mean, I think the biggest loser in all this is the American people. I mean, the whole purpose of this was to send people that could represent you to Washington. And I think this runs antithetical to that on both sides of the aisle. And I think that, these states falling into mono parties is also against the interest of the people, whether it's completely conservative led or completely Democrat led. I think that the idea was that there would be debate and consensus in the best interest of the people. That is not at all what's happening anymore. So that's my 2 cents on it.
The end of the day, as these districts have become less and less and less competitive, and gerrymandering has happened more and more and more, the hyper tension or hyper politic focus on one side or the other has grown and grown and grown, because you're winning out of if you're winning out of a district, particularly one that's gerrymandering, you're winning in the primary, you're not winning in the general. You got to get through the primary. And if you're primary Republican, primary Dem, what you need to do to attract a primary voter. And that's going to be more extreme views on both sides of the aisle rather than a centrist that's going to be in the middle.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the other downstream effect, is that it allows it for more skewing more to the right and the left. And
Yep.
I mean, before, you had a more diverse district, and you had to be, even if it was a blue district, you tended to be more towards the middle. And vice versa, if you were conservative, you had to be a little bit more to the middle. And I think that's been a lot lost since the 1990s. Is we've lost a lot of this middle, that purple independent middle, which I think is unfortunate that we've lost that.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of wild. Well, lots of fun topics. Great to have you two on to kind of break down what was going on at NBWA. George, anything else you think we missed we should touch on too?
No, just lots of great. Well, you've seen a lot in the trade regs, right? AB being AB. And so there seems to be a lot of positive momentum around, you think about, again, we've talked about this, but just all the activities that are happening in the country, right, this year. And there's still lots of excitement, which I think is fun, right? So I think FIFA is really, I think it's energizing people, but it's energizing the industry too, right? So obviously LA is a hotbed, and you can't walk past the building and there's, a 90-foot tall, Mick Ultra can on the side of a building, right? Or a Busch Light. Or so in this particular market, it seems like AB is definitely, buying the space and getting it out there. But I just think overall, right, it's still fun to see, the positive perspective of all the events that are going to happen this year, this summer, right? That still, I think, give the industry a lot of hope of we're going to continue to see that growth, even though there might be some bumps along the way, that these are opportunities for us And I think that's really what people need to step back to, is these are, again, those moments to celebrate and, to have a beer to do so, right? And find those opportunities and execute upon them and enjoy them.
Well, if you like what we're doing, continue to listen, subscribe, share with a friend. You can hit us up with any questions at info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptch.com. You boys rock. Moneyball Ross and the Silver Fox George with us. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Bud, and we'll be back again next week with more here on the Tapped In Sales Podcast. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.